Good morning.
Hey,
Okay, Ms. Calloway.
Miss Downs. How are you? This has been
I'm
fun.
I'm great. I'm really excited to be here with you today and honored to be a part of this conversation and the initiative here in Detroit. I was so excited when Kalila said that we were going to be paired together because you and I met about what, a year and a half ago and became fast friends. But I think, like a lot of people, because of COVID, we haven't been able to get together in person or even on the phone. So here
Yeah,
we are.
I know. It took a project to get us together. And the cool part is, I know a lot of the pairs of folks that are being put together don't know each other. And I can't imagine how do you have this conversation, these kinds of conversations outside of relationship, which I know we're going to talk about later. But this was so when they said it was you, I'm like, we talk about this stuff all the time. So it's really cool.
It is cool, and I would say that thinking about the events over the last 2.5 months
Mhm.
since the George Floyd murder, I've been really kind of struck by how lucky I am to have the rich friendships
Mhm.
with people who don't look like me. And that was um, built over the last decade.
Mhm.
And I think that that is really the challenge for all of us to kind of
Sure.
and connect as human beings.
Agree. Agree. And for me, the rich relationships, to use your term, with people that don't look like me, has been almost a saving grace. You remember as we prepared for this, you know that I did a YouTube video on race and just a recounting of some of my experiences with racism over my life, starting at 8 years old and kind of up to the present. And it was really at different times in my life, I've gotten to a point where I was really struggling with having authentic relationships broadly with white people and specifically white women. I know we'll talk about that, but it's relationships with you, Rachel, with my friend Shannon, with Linda, with Renette. Those were my saving grace because when I wanted to throw in the towel and just like whatever, um, I would not trade these relationships for anything. And so that it's been an anchor, and I appreciate that. And not just knowing that we have this affinity for one another, but knowing that even in times like these, you and I could have the difficult conversations and
Mm.
still, walk away from each other, in still engulfed in a circle of love and affinity. And that means a lot to me, especially right now, because in other situations, I need some help with my attitude.
Well, and I think that, it goes to that adage that was so brilliant, coming from the First Lady Michelle Obama about how it's hard to hate people up close.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that is the truth. I
Absolutely.
would say that, to that point, when I watched your YouTube video on race, it pained me so personally because of the relationship that we have, for the love that I have for you, and that I could see the pain that was there under the surface, and then the recognition that you carry that pain with you everywhere, every day.
Every day. Every day. And it's one of those things that we unfortunately become accustomed to. As you know, I fancy myself a mental and emotional wellness advocate. And I do a lot of talking about how we carry post-traumatic stress from the racism that we have had in our lives. And quite frankly, I believe generationally, we carry that. I believe we carry that in our DNA. And so it really requires almost miraculous intervention to break that chain, pun intended, to break the chains and to really be able to progress. One example that I think about, and there is a whole set of research on this, and there's a documentary on even controlling for socioeconomic status, for education, affluency, all of this. Black women have more challenges in childbirth than white women, right? My health
Absolutely.
training. And when I think about my birth experience with my daughter, who will be 23 on Sunday, which means I probably need to get rid of the baby fat now, right? 23. I think about my birth experience with her and with all of the supports, with insurance, with a husband, a supportive family, a good salary, great health insurance, all of this. I still delivered a child at 29 weeks gestation. I still had toxemia, right? And just all of the, and I watch, younger girls and white women pop in and out of this room, and I'm still there. And it's just, it is amazing how we carry that on us. And we've got to figure out a way to release that and to work in partnership with our white women sisters to move beyond that, which is why this initiative is so important. I was so excited to be included in this Share the Mic Detroit.
So to level set for the people who will watch this, both Joy and I are mental health professionals. I'm a newly minted professional in school counseling advocate, and I would say that a lot of our conversation when we were preparing for today's call kind of focused on what it means to be a survivor of childhood trauma, of the trauma that we inflict upon Black and Brown people. Um, so, with that, what does it mean for you, Joy, to amplify the voices of Black women?
First of all, I love that term. I think I'm going to put that on a T-shirt. I love T-shirts. Voice, Voices of Black women. The first thing that came to mind when I saw that was how I tend to distinguish my voice and my amplification from others. And by that, I mean, when I first heard that, I thought, I'm pretty, loquacious, pretty assertive, loud, vocally boisterous person. I'll say it that way. And so I rarely find myself in a situation where my voice is not amplified. Now, as we talked, I can think of a situation as a young professional in mid 90s. I'll share. I was a consultant in the HR department with American Axle here in Detroit, well, Hamtramck. And I remember being in a work group with a bunch of men, white men, and the facilitator, it was some type of team building or leadership development exercise. The facilitator gave us the instruction, and we were going around this table. There were probably 8 of us. I'm the only Black woman, I believe, in the room, definitely at the table. And we struggled for about 15 minutes going down a path that was not what I understood the facilitator to say. And there were a few times that I said, gentlemen, that's not what we're supposed to be doing. Gentlemen, that's not what we're supposed to be doing. Okay, y'all, this is not what we're supposed to be doing. And it was as if I was saying nothing. I will never forget that. Facilitators walking the room as they do. I called him over, excuse me, would you explain it's about 15 minutes in, Rachel. Would you explain the instructions? He explained it exactly the way that I had been explaining it to these white men for 15, 20 minutes. And they were like, oh, we didn't understand that. And I just looked and I just like, as I said, and I got up and walked away from the table. So again, that is one situation which I can think I felt like my voice was muffled, but in most other situations, I am created to be that type. My voice is going to get heard, which means that there are some environments that are not right for me. Mm-hmm. And I have to accept that. It's like, know my lane.
We talked about this on our prep call in that, when I reflect on how I can really double down on my commitment to social justice and what can I do to support my brothers and sisters, it's really about digging in and being prepared with some really compelling talking points and facts to dispute the ignorance
absolutely
that is rampant. So whereas 6 months ago, if I got into some kind of debate on social media with somebody who wanted to spew hatred, I might shut them off, shut them down, walk away because, you know, I don't have time or energy for that kind of foolishness. But now, if I'm serious
Mm,
about not just being an ally,
absolutely.
but an accomplice, or to, you know, borrow Tawana Petty's phrase, which I think is brilliant, is co-liberation, because this is about how we co-liberate as human beings.
Hmm.
Um,
Sure.
I have to take a stronger stand to dispute the racism, the ignorance, the hatred,
Mhm.
and do what I can to invite people into the conversation to want to know more,
Absolutely.
to
And
get curious.
that helps to balance for those of us. And again, it's knowing our lane. And that one of the things that I would say to my sisters that are listening is knowing our lane. Your willingness to go outside of your normal, forget it, I'm out of here, I don't have time, and to take the time to go down that path with someone balances out someone like me who's going to stay at that. I don't have time. It is not my task to teach white people how to treat me, right? And how to, it's not. And so that balance is really important. But there are people, and I respect those people who look like me, who will take the time, they have the research and all the arguing points, and they will go toe to toe with someone and just break down an argument about racism or privilege. And I love that. And I honor them in those roles. I know that I'm not created for that. And there are other roles for me to play.
I want to add to that, because I think a lot of white people who are new to this conversation don't understand why it's inappropriate to expect Black people to educate them or fill them in on, you know, XYZ.
Mhm.
And, you know, the reality is it is the burden of every element of moving through your day in your Black skin that takes a physical and emotional and psychological toll. So, you know, it's like it's really inappropriate to ask for more beyond that.
It's a balance, because part of me is like, you know what, our entire history in this country has been serving you, and you're asking me to serve you more by teaching you this thing. However, and I have to be careful what I said a little bit earlier, I teach my daughter Vashti, we train people how to treat us.
Mhm.
That is your, so there's this balance, right? There is, in the moment, if there is a situation that occurs, and something happens in the moment, that it is important for me to train you. For example, and depending on your view of interactions between Black and white people and women in general, this may or may not prick your consciousness. I was in a fancy restaurant in the ladies' room, headed out, older white woman coming in. I had on a very flowy, it was a fancy kind of little outfit. And it looks like a dress, but it has a split, and it opens to pants, but it has these panels in front. So I was coming out and she was complimenting me and saying how beautiful it was. Oh, that's a lovely outfit. And she reached up and grabbed the panel part and right at my crotch area and opened it. And I like, excuse me, thank you for your compliments. Don't touch me. It was like, excuse me. So in that moment, it was important for me to let her know, we don't have, if you did that, that's different. You're my sister. You're like, oh girl, what's this?
Right.
I didn't know this woman. And so for me, it was one, I went all the way there. Rachel, I went all the way, like, once again, you think you own this body and you're able to put your hands on me, almost intimately, to check me out. I was hot, and I let her know it. So in that moment, yes, we train people, but that overall, I'm not the one to stand up and give the whole lecture, or I'm not Dr. Joy DeGruy, who I love desperately, right? I'm not that one, although I love that work. I'm better in the moment.
So tell me a little bit more about kind of your personal perspective on the adversarial relationship between
Mhm.
Black and white women.
And this is very personal for me, very personal. And I'm sure it's something that I will continue to grow and actualize over my lifetime. Again, because I have such strong feelings about our history between Black and white women, and I also have equally strong relationships with white women, my white sisters. Um, a couple things come to mind. Again, I mentioned one earlier. Our entire history in this country until very recently, we were serving white people and white women, and caring for that. My grandmother was a domestic for, white women in their homes. So just like, one generation up too. And so when I think about traditionally, think about slave time and the idea that if I am working in your home, serving you, serving your children, nursing your children, literally breastfeeding your children, cooking your food, cleaning your clothes, all of this. And let's add to it, we all know, you and I know what happens at night when you're in bed, and in many cases your husband comes out to where I live and has his way. So and I get the argument of women's positioning back in those times, but there's something about that history that just still, it just kind of, it's in my craw. And so even today, our society has white women on a pedestal. And there's this whole concept of white women fragility. Sojourner Truth, ain't I a woman? You knew I was going to say that. And so, and there have been studies. Two damsels in distress in the street with a car broken down, a white woman and a black woman. People stop to help the white woman and figure that the black woman will figure it out. Pain management in the hospital for childbirth. White women get more pain meds than do black women because we are still seen as less human, less, that pain impacts us less. You know, I could go on and on. Let me make one other comment, which kind of builds up where I am. So it's our traditional, that history, slave time. And then we deal with kind of that Jim Crow period, that antebellum period of lynching. When you look at the statistics on lynching and you siphon out the men that were lynched, because women were lynched too, and a lot of people don't realize that. When you look at the men, black men that were lynched, 75 to 85%, I got to go back, it's been a minute since I looked at it. The vast majority of black men that were lynched because a white woman either lied on them and said they said something, did something, looked at them, or they did look or say or something. The Emmett Till story. We know that one because of it was so horrendous. He was so young. His mother was adamant that we saw what he looked like after they tortured him and killed him. But the vast majority of lynchings of black men had something to do with white women. And so there's still, and yet and still and today, we still find that in many ways, our society and in some pockets, black men have black women or have white women on a pedestal. And so I struggle with all of that. I struggle with all of that. And add, my girl in Central Park who wanted to, as I say, weaponize her white woman fragility, you know, at what point does that end? And we decide that, ain't I a woman?
That's the thing that I have to say, when it comes to white people who are new to this work, in particular white women, you know, fair warning, it's really painful and uncomfortable. And you got to push through and stick with it and find other people who are committed to social justice to unpack it, because it's not the job of your black friends to make you feel better or say, not you.
Right.
Because that's the other, I would say, epiphany that's kind of blown my mind in this last month and a half is I've been studying African American history at both the undergrad and graduate level in the last 10 years. I studied it in my counseling graduate work. I have been a part of social justice fellowships. I, have been actively working in diversity and inclusion for more than 5 years. And yet it's like Alice in Wonderland. The further you look into the rabbit hole and recognize how embedded racism is in every element of our society, it's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And really really challenging.
And one of the challenges, I can imagine that very much. And one of the challenges is for us as Black women, like you said earlier, we live and breathe every day. This is every day. This is nothing new. Again, as I said in the video, George Floyd was just another one. Whereas now there were so many white people like, oh my gosh, this is happening. It's like it's been happening. We just got video now. Nothing has changed. And if it has changed, I'm almost willing to say that in light of the last 4 years and the tone and tenor of our country, there are some places where it's start to return to some previous levels, where we're dragging black men behind trucks in the street. I mean, and it is ever present. And so our task is to not allow the omnipresence of racism to overtake us, because we still have to be wives and mothers and teachers and lawyers and doctors and community activists and preachers and all of this, lovers and all of that. We still have to manage those pieces of our lives with the ever-present notion of racism, and sexism, because we're doubly blessed,
Right.
um, in the world, and it's challenging. So that's where, as we talked about, that's where that angry black woman thing comes from.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually have a talk that I offer fairly frequently on dismantling the myth of the angry black woman, and I spend almost the first third of that thing saying why we are angry and have every right to be. And we talk about how media portrays us, and how it's a lot of pressure to not fall into one of those stereotypes that is more comfortable for society, right? So we're either Mammy or Aunt Jemima, or we're Jezebel / Cardi B, or we're what is it, Sapphire, snappy snappy, you know. So when we have other images, Claire Huxtable, or my girl from Scandal, Olivia Pope, or we have my girl from Insecure. Now we're starting to see the woman from the Borderlones, Nova Borderlone, from Queen Sugar. We're starting to see other images
Mm-hmm.
of Black women that don't fall into those buckets. And that helps us. That helps relieve some of the pressure. So now I don't have to just be Mammy or Jezebel or Sapphire, right? There's some other people. Oh, girl, you're like Olivia Pope, right? There are other images, and that helps to relieve some of the pressure.
But the other thing that I am excited to see is kind of this new understanding and appreciation for what diversity and inclusion really means. Because for so long, assimilation was held up as the goal.
Yeah.
And now it's really about inviting everyone to show up
Mhm.
in their full human beingness.
So I love that term. Just the their authenticity, and I recognize that we do have to, all of us in some senses, have to show up in what I call tempered authenticity, right? So I use the example of going into a library. I told you I'm boisterous, right, and highly, you know that, right? But I know that the culture and the norms of the library are such that I can't go in talk in full voice, and I shouldn't. And so I am no less myself if I lower my voice and talk in tones that make sense for the library, right? So the world is like that for us. My intention is to be fully me wherever I am. And for me, that means it's okay that I'm not going to be the first Black person that did X, Y, and Z usually, because I don't want to take on that mantle of first, right? Again, I respect and honor those people who do. But there's something about the need to assimilate more as
Mm-hmm.
the first than as you are. I am as I said, a boisterous, opinionated, dark-skinned Black woman with locked hair. There are some places that would not be as comfortable for me as I would want them to be. And I don't have to be the trailblazer. I want to be somewhere where people celebrate and welcome me and want to include all of me, not a place where I'm just tolerated. Do you follow? And so if
Absolutely.
I have to assimilate so much that I have to figure out how to straighten my hair, no judgment for those who do, because that we are a multiplicity of personas in the race and in our gender. Um, but we have to, I go back to the place of we all have to know our lane. Where am I most comfortable? Where can I be most impactful for Black women? Because that's really important for me. And if my voice cannot be optimally received in place A, and I'm not going to be able to do my best work for me and for Black women, then that's not the place for me, and that's okay. So let me go somewhere where I can be heard and received.
So going back to when you and I first met,
Mhm.
it was you were being recognized as a diversity champion from the Race Relations Diversity Task Force. And you were just launching your new consulting practice. And I can attest that you've been killing it because
Thank you.
last night we tried to get on a call and you were in conference until 8 p.m. And booked all this morning. So tell me a little bit more about the work that you're doing now.
Thank you for the opportunity. So as you remember, I have about 25, 26 years of healthcare management experience, nonprofit executive leadership, had the opportunity, as life would have it, to come out on my own. And I realized that there are things that I have enjoyed doing, and I've always done them in tandem with my traditional career. I love public speaking, professional speaking. Just give me a microphone and a topic, and I will talk about anything, anything. I could talk about a leaf for 2 hours, and I'm not a botanist. So I love professional speaking. So I get offers to MC things or keynote. I do lunches and conferences and things like that. And I love that. The second piece of my work is around corporate training. And so organizations bring me in. I have a couple of training contracts, and I'm contracted to teach certain classes, emotional intelligence, effective communication, leadership and management skills for women. I'm dealing with difficult employees, that kind of thing. So corporations bring me in to do training. And then the other piece of my work is what I call problem solving, which is really business consulting. I am, and I receive it as a gift, gifted in group engagement, group facilitation. I'm often called to the table when groups of people can't get along,
Mm-hmm.
and they to be able to need help finding their center, getting unstuck so that they can flow the way they were designed to flow. I keep telling people, at the risk of upsetting some of our genteel listeners, I keep telling people I'm going to get a crystal plunger as a brew, because I can lean in at the cocktail parties. When people ask me what I do, I can lean in and say, "Do you have a plunger at your home?" And they'll say, "Yes, of course I do." Well, what do plungers do? Plungers move stuff out of the way so that things can flow the way they were designed to flow. And so that's the work that I do with individuals and with organizations. What people are probably most familiar with right now, I am launching my passion project, my One Crisis from Crazy. And we've talked about this in the concept that many of us, all of us, my love point is women, professional women and Black women, but the message is for everyone. We have been trained to show up perfectly. We are perfectly coiffed and pedigreed and accessorized. I tell people women have the 4 H's. They have the right house, the right husband, the right handbag, the right heels. With all of that, we still don't recognize the importance of mental and emotional wellness, and we don't understand the critical nature of being in mental and emotional distress. And you know this as a licensed professional far better than do I. But I really speak to those people who need a safe place in all of their fabulosity to say, I too am challenged. I am one crisis from crazy. As good as I look, as well as I show up, as well as I'm doing on the job, as beautiful as my children look, as handsome as my husband is, you follow. And so
Amen.
most of the work, and you'd be amazed how many people I do some small group and individual counseling. I'm a non-licensed professional, but it's just kind of life coaching and counseling around people like that. It's like people think I am phenomenal, and I have ulcers and I have fibroids and I'm falling apart. I have panic attacks because I have these issues. And so that's my passion place right now, and it fits all of us. It fits all of us. I have the opportunity to talk to women, to men, to Black men who have all those other layers, and God forbid they let anybody know that they're in mental and emotional distress. I talk to pastors and first responders. It fits so many different niches of people that it has really resonated. I'm very thankful to be able to do the work. It's difficult though, because it requires me to be very transparent about my challenges and my forays into depression. and anxiety.
But I'll be candid with you. I mean, in particular, just as an example, when I'm working with young people,
Mhm.
part of the reason that I'm so passionate about counseling and school counseling is my teenage years
Mm.
were horrible. I went to 3 different high schools and 4 different stops. We were evicted between my junior and senior year. And meanwhile, I know I'm going to be responsible for supporting myself 30 days after graduation, and I have no idea, how I'm going to pull this off.
Mhm.
We expect so much from our young people when they don't have the life experience to put things into context.
Right.
You
That's
know, we pressure them to perform in schools when we don't really um, take the time to understand what may be going on for them at home or not going on at home.
yeah.
And again, teaching people how to show up for themselves
Mhm.
and take responsibility for their mental health
Absolutely.
is critically important. So I love that you're doing this work. I would say that's been one of the kind of silver linings of the COVID pandemic.
Mhm.
For me personally, when you talk about showing up perfectly, that's been kind of an unnecessary burden that I've taken on in my life. And for the first time in my life, I'm showing up on Zoom calls regularly, in pajamas, no shower, makeup, and it is what it is.
Right. It gives us an opportunity to really, like all crises, gives us an opportunity to really consider what's important,
Mhm. It's
right?
true. It's
Um,
true.
and when we think about why is it, I'm a Hamilton fan, as you remember. And so I think about often in my head, what flows through is how lucky we are to be alive right now. If you think about all these layered pandemics we're in, and it looks horrible, but just think about the opportunity we have to really turn the tide on some of this stuff. The world has stopped.
Hmm.
So when things happen, when we're seeing the disproportionate share of Black and Brown people being impacted by this COVID epidemic, both physically, from their health perspective, economically, when we see what's happening with racial and social injustice, and we were all sitting at home watching George Floyd, for 46 seconds lose his life. So there's a reason, I believe, that this is all happening right now in this way. The world wasn't just not swirling and George got lost in the stack with Brianna and Tamir and everybody else. There's a
Right.
reason. And we have to take advantage of this moment, which is another reason this share the mic concept that again, and you know me, I would have never thought about this. I'm like, I'm gonna sit on and talk to a white woman for an hour about race. I don't think so. Until they said it was Rachel. I was like, oh, okay. It's allowing us, I used to say forcing us, it's allowing us to approach these pandemics from a place of still and quiet that we've been forced into so that we can really look at not only the situation, but we can really look at ourselves. And I think
So
that's a blessing.
it is a blessing. Um, it's been a blessing to share the mic with you today.
Yeah.
And I would say, to wrap up, what do you think is most important for white women to know? And how can we best support um, Black women and communities of color?
I love that question. Um, I would say, in no particular order, recognize that it's not about you. Lose the white women fragility. Lose the I'm on the pedestal, I'm in the center of it. That the Karen thing. Let's make it about me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lose that. Develop relationship, and I say that out loud so I can hear it myself. Develop relationship with Black women, real relationship. Not don't just ride the Black wave that we're on right now.
Right.
Real relationship, because as you said earlier, my forever first lady, um, it's hard to hate someone up close. And when we're in relationship, you get to know me and my life and understand how I approach the world. I think that's important. I think also understanding history, as difficult as it may be,
Hmm.
to learn about the history of white women in this country in relationship to Black women, it is not pretty, but it's important to understand today. It's a Sankofa bird. You have to look backward in order to go forward, and be willing to be vulnerable and ask the questions you need to ask. I have a dear family friend, I call her Cuz. Dear family friend, white woman, lives in New Jersey. When this all popped off, I made a post. I think she had seen my racism video, which was on Facebook, and she instant messaged me. We've known each other since we were kids. And she said, I'm speechless and I want to be helpful. Direct me. That's all she said. It makes me weepy. That's all she said was, and this is someone I've known all my life, and that just really touched me. And so I've sent her books and we've sent videos back and forth, and she feels safe to ask the question, well, why do you all feel that way? Why? Because we have relationship, Rachel. We can have those conversations. But just don't ask somebody random in the bathroom at a fancy restaurant. Just don't grab them and have them tell you their story. That's a real relationship with somebody. That's what I think.
Well, I'm grateful for the real relationship that you and I have.
I love you, girl. I
I
really.
love you too. Um, One last question. Do you have a favorite book that you might want to recommend to our viewers?
I am reading, I read a few books at a time because I really love nonfiction. I love memoirs, and I love, I said nonfiction and fiction. So there are three books. One, Small Great Things by Jodi Picoult. I love Jodi Picoult. Small Great Things, I just finished it. I'm actually going to do a pop-up book club on Facebook on this book. So people should get this and then join it. I am.
Okay.
It is about a Black woman nurse, real time, 2015, 2016 setting, who, labor and delivery nurse, who is forbidden to care for a white infant because his parents are white supremacists and they demand that she not be part of their child's care. And their child goes into, without spoiling, their child goes into crisis, and she has to decide, do I do what my nursing oath, my Florence Nightingale oath has said for me to do and take care of this child, or do I follow the hospital's recommend, what they demanded, that I not touch the child? The book is fascinating. Watch for the pop-up. I want you in it. It was so good. I'm also just starting White Fragility, of course, like everybody else, because I haven't read it. And How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi are the three right now.
Okay.
So that's what I'd say. Grab a hold of. Grab a hold of.
Well, I'm definitely going to join your book club and I look forward to it. I actually just started reading physical books again. Um,
Instead of the electronic. No, I need to highlight right in the margins.
yeah,
Yeah, what are you reading?
bingo. Right now I'm reading Surviving Complex Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder, which is about childhood trauma. And I have to say, when I think about what Black children experience,
Many Black children. Not all.
even Black children who come from healthy, happy homes, when you're out in the world, you don't have the same experiences and access
That's right. That's
that
right.
that white children, and then how that gets internalized and manifested over time.
Absolutely. I want to recommend that book. You mentioned that before. There are a couple people that I think need to read that book. Yeah. Well, very
So,
thank you. This was fun. I really enjoyed this, and it's important. It's important.
well, I can't wait until you and I are able to see each other in person again.
A real hug, right? Instead of a virtual hug.
Yeah, amen.